thank you for taking the time to interview with the City Council today, and I know you'll be interviewing later with the community panel as well. Under normal circumstances, the City Council would be the one asking the questions, but since we're doing this virtually and we have a pretty tight time frame, Gary Weirs has asked that I ask all the questions. But I would first like to take a moment to introduce our City Council members. First is Council President Johnson. Dave Pritchett, who is the chair of Personnel and Finance. Kelly Bevins, who is the chair of our Safety and Public Works. Tad Erickson. Jan Lambert. Kevin Stunek. Wayne Erickson is another council member who was unable to join us today, and Mayor Bedeau. Also joining us, we have council member elect Tiffany Stenglein, and Councilmember O'Day may be popping in. So thank you. With that, just to let you know that we have scheduled 35 minutes for this interview. We have 13 prepared questions, so please be mindful of the time. And so that I don't lose track of time, I have set an alarm on my phone when we have 5 minutes left. So thanks for your patience and cooperation with these virtual interviews. And I am just going to go ahead and get us started.
All right, thank you.
Please tell us what interests you about the position and highlight key qualifications that make you the best person for the job.
All right. Well, I'll admit I really haven't actually been on a job search. Just kind of periodically checked the post board and saw that the city of Brainerd was looking for a police chief. I just think it's an incredible opportunity for me to lead an agency, be the person in charge. Actually, I think Brainerd itself is just be an awesome place to relocate my family and raise my kids and be a part of the community up there. But yeah, it's just I think the city of Brainerd is a very unique opportunity to be a police chief.
Thank you, James. Please describe your leadership and management style and the strategies you would use to manage staff in the department.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the easiest thing is to say that you want to lead by example, especially if you're a chief. But I think there's a balancing act in law enforcement between being a good example and then also leading by command. I think in a police agency, you need to know, what the mission is, what we're working towards. And your employees need to know that. I think you have to be one-on-one as far as your frontline supervisors, monitoring your officers and being mindful of what that you're trying to work towards together. I think that's the way that you get the most out of employees. Another big thing for me is just developing the people that you have on your staff. I guess my goal would be that the next time you don't have to look outside for a police chief because the police chief is internal in the building, that we are developing people to take the next steps in their career and to be ready for those challenges.
Thank you. Could you please describe your experience related to community policing and how you would bring that to the city of Brainerd?
Yeah. I mean, over the last 20 years, I have extensive experience attending community meetings, working with at community meetings on livability issues, public speaking, identifying problems that we have. I think the biggest thing is that when you go to a community meeting, maybe it's a problem property, a bar or a problem business. It's coming to those meetings with a clear-cut mission and then coming with the information that you need. I mean, how many 911 calls have we had to a problem business? Were officers issuing citations or making arrests? Coming up with a plan for what you're trying to work through and then following up with that. A lot of the times it's educating the community on what we can do and what we can't do, and then trying to find a solution that's workable for everybody involved.
Thanks. What have you done to further your knowledge and understanding about diversity in a community? And how have you demonstrated your knowledge?
Yeah. Well, I think that is the one thing about working for the Minneapolis Police Department right now. I mean, we are a part of one of the most diverse police departments in the United States of America. We have victims packets in 3 different languages. So I have extensive experience in attending community meetings and working with community members where English is their second language. And those in itself provide a lot of challenges at times. But because I'm in a community that's so immersed with diversity, I have extensive experience working with people of color and in all gender.
Thank you. So can you describe a time for us when you made a mistake at work? And how did you deal with the situation and what was the outcome?
Yeah. I know one thing that it's always haunted me is a new investigator. I was in narcotics at the time. We had a kind of a high profile case that we worked on, and there was kind of some miscues on a page 5 inventory form for the case, where things weren't properly documented with the chain of evidence, and there was a case that ended up not getting charged out. A bad guy that literally should have been going to jail that didn't, and I owned that, and it's one of those things that going forward for the last 13 years since this happened, I've always been trying to make sure that let's just pump the brakes. Let's slow down for a second here. Are we doing everything that we need to do on this? So it's just being mindful of not going too fast and making sure that you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's.
Thanks. Can you describe an experience where you have had to respond and resolve a difficult and sensitive community member inquiry or complaint?
I'm I'm right now in Minneapolis. I'm doing that every day. Each day it's been challenging, where we're really trying to rebuild the community trust down there. As a frontline supervisor, I'm being questioned daily on police tactics, police response, and it's literally like putting a penny in a savings account, where we're just trying to get those positive deposits back with the community, because it's rebuilding a trust that's been broken down there, and it comes in day at a time. Some of the complaints that you take are simple things where maybe an officer needs to be pulled aside and coached and talked to about something, and then sometimes there are more serious allegations that possibly do have some substance that need to be further investigated.
Thank you. Can you describe any partnerships you have been a part of creating? How did you build these types of relationships that benefits the community or organization that you've worked for?
Yeah. So previously, over the last 5 years, I've been assigned to the FBI. I was on a multi-jurisdictional task force there, and I was sent there to represent Minneapolis on this task force. And then upon my arrival, I was kind of promoted internally to actually lead this organization. So it was a very prestigious honor. We were being measured quarterly on results in major cases that we were working on. But I was partnerships with St. Paul Police, Minneapolis Police, BCA, FBI, DEA. We had a task force comprised of agents and officers from all those agencies, and I was the operations administrative supervisor for that task force.
Thank you. Can you describe a situation that you feel demonstrates your integrity and ethical standards?
I just think that ethical standards are and I tell young patrol officers this all the time. It's doing the right thing when people aren't watching. It's doing the right thing when you're on a call. It's your own personal ethical responsibility to policing to make sure that you're operating in an ethical and reasonable way.
Thanks. If you're hired for this position and are still with the organization 5 years from now, how do you think the department will be different?
It's my hope that in 5 years from now that we have, in the city of Brainerd too, just reached out and made more contact with people. I think social media is just the wave of the future. It's the most instant way to make community contacts with people. So I think it's just the perception of the department would grow, more positive contacts would be made, but it's like anything else. I mean, there are growth areas in every organization to make, and I think one of them is just finding more way to connect with people and again rebuild that community trust. People right now, it's just a national thing right now where they're questioning police tactics, they're questioning police responsibility, and it doesn't matter what community you're in, or any state that you're in. We need to get better at rebuilding that trust.
Thank you. Describe your philosophy and techniques relating to retention of law enforcement personnel.
Yeah, retention is a huge problem in law enforcement right now. I think, we've always been aware of PTSD and employee wellness, but I don't know that we've been doing the best job on checking in with our employees. I think that having early intervention systems in place where you're doing monthly check-ins with officers, and then have some sort of measurements in place to be able to measure performance. And it may not necessarily be something that's, how many traffic stops are they making or what are they doing on their shift out there, but what are their short and long-term goals, and how are we helping them get there? I think that we're just seeing a lot more turnover in this job now than we used to have, and I think, how do we engage officers to want to stay? And it's providing career enrichment opportunities, secondary assignments within what they do, and then just constantly challenging them. Now, not everybody can be the police chief, not everybody can be a police sergeant, but maybe there are ways that we can challenge them to stay on this job. It never used to be this way. It used to be when, even when I first started, you come on the job and you sign up for a 30-year commitment, and you just do that. But we're finding, especially with I hate to use the millennial term type thing, but this newer generation, they want more out of this job. And I think it's on the frontline supervisors in the department to have infrastructure in place to be able to challenge and engage them.
Thanks. If you could go back to when you were first thinking about police work as a career, what advice would you give yourself?
It's it's just crazy how much things have changed, but then also how they haven't changed. I started in 2000, just a little bit before 9/11 happened, when the public perception of policing was at an all-time high. I don't know that any officer ever paid for a breakfast or dinner anywhere at that time frame, but I got in this job because I wanted to help people and do the right thing. And 20 years later, I still take pride in career development and helping officers get promoted to sergeant. So for me, it's been a fulfilling career. I've been very blessed, very, very lucky to have a variety of assignments and be challenged in a lot of ways. And I think it's all of those things that have led me to this moment right now, where I look at the opportunity to be a chief and lead an agency and an organization. And I know that 20 years later, I'm still going strong, and that this is a job for me, and this is what I want to do.
Thanks. So why should the Brainerd City Council select you as their next police chief?
I understand that being the police chief of Brainerd, I represent the department 24 hours a day, whether I'm in uniform, whether I'm out of uniform, whether I'm at a community meeting, or whether I'm in my off time. And I understand the responsibility of wearing that badge and honoring the city in the position that I would hold. I think, I'm maybe not going on a limb here. I'm probably maybe one of the younger candidates that's in this position. I know there's other finalists that have had chances to be chiefs, and I feel like this is my time. This is my opportunity to get plugged in and impact an organization. I think we're under unprecedented times right now, and I'm at the epicenter of what's happening, down in Minneapolis right now. I understand the dynamics that we're in right now. I understand the rebuilding of the community trust. I understand the procedural justice that's in play, where people are, maybe not trusting the police, and they want to have more voice and more involvement in, what we're doing for policing in these communities.
Thanks. And our last question is, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I do have, actually do have some questions. I guess, not being there internally now, I was curious what the relationship was between the police administration and the police union right now.
Does somebody want to answer that, or know how to answer that? The union is currently under contract, so we have that going for us. I think we get along quite well with the police unions. We negotiated a new contract, I believe, last year, no, 2 years ago, and we implemented a new pay grid system that had some performance-based incentives in it. And the police unions were the first unions out of the 7, 8, 9 the city deals with. The police were the first ones on board with the new compensation program. So I think we get along quite well.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to follow up on that? Does that answer your question?
It does, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Other
Would you have
questions?
any more questions of us?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious. Again, outside perspective. I mean, you've gone outside the agency looking for something different, clearly. So, what's something that you think? What's a growth area for the police department? What's something that you think they need to do better?
Anybody want to take that one? Jan?
I guess just the same as the rest of the nation or other police departments is retention. How can we keep our police officers that we've trained and vetted and keep them in our area instead of going into a fellow community or a police department? I think that's our biggest issue. So, thanks. Oh, and may I ask, we do have a very, we do have a very, FTO, what is it called? I can't remember. Training, for probation. Yeah, we have a very good program on that. And so I just would like to see how we can do that retention. Thank you.
Anybody else want to follow up on that? Yeah, James, that is probably the biggest problem. I don't fault the current chief, but we have budgeted for 27 sworn officers, and we are currently, I believe, at 22. And it's been a persistent problem for years that we just can't get a full roster of officers to stay. Every time we train them and they decide to move on or whatnot.
Yeah.
You have any more questions?
I guess the last thing. Maybe you're seeing with COVID and everything else, there's kind of a natural migration of people that are moving north now. I mean, are you anticipating that Brainerd is it still growing? Are you anticipating over the next 5 years the department would grow as well?
Yeah, as the city continues to grow, I think the department would continue to grow. I think over the last 3 years, we have added 3 or 4 sworn officers that weren't on the roster as recent as 5 years ago. So we kind of take the police chief's, the police chief tells us what the police department needs to effectively operate in the city, and we try to accommodate it.
Yeah.
Jan?
The other thing too, we have increased on the administration some new positions. We got a lieutenant now, which is a new position. So yes, I see. In my eyes, I think Chief McQuiston has looked at the growth for our city and is planning it on the what do you call it, frontline people. Thank you.
Any other council members or the mayor want to follow up on that? Okay, any more questions, James?
No, I don't. I think regardless what direction you do, as far as retention too, just another thing to think about with recruitment is the CSO program. I know just from our aspect in Minneapolis, we've had a really hard time too hiring officers, finding officers, but the CSO program, when we can go out and specifically recruit people and get them while they're young. You know, a lot of times we've kind of put them on even a tuition reimbursement plan with a contract that they sign. We've had a lot of luck hiring and retaining people through the CSO program. So it's just something I guess I would say to think about.
Okay, thank you. And Jennifer, we've exhausted all of our questions. We've answered all of James's questions. We do have 15 minutes of time yet. Should we sing a song or what do you want to do?
I guess I would just like to say, you know, James, thank you so much again for taking the time. I know this is a strange world we're living in and doing this virtually, and we certainly appreciate that and your flexibility in accommodating the world we're living in now. So, and Gary Wires will be circling back around with candidates. So you would expect to hear from him.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thanks for joining us.
Very much.
Thank you.
Jan?
All I was gonna say, since we had some time, I was just wondering, we could take the opportunity to thank him ourselves, but I appreciate that you did it and not be quiet.
All right, thank you, James.
Thank you. Well, I'm trying to leave. There we go.
All right. So
I should have done some homework on the where the police department's at. I'm just kind of guessing on the answers.
You did very good.
Thank you.
You did, and can I ask some kind of clarifying stuff? Chief McQuiston is here with us virtually. So I'm just thinking logistically, I don't know if the council is comfortable and Corky is comfortable, you know, answering some of those. I can't answer the police questions.
You know, I wonder if
I think it'd be very appropriate.
Mhm.
And I wonder if the time periods in between might be a good time for just some dialogue back and forth if you guys have questions, because I think some of it speaks to the preparation of the candidates as far as if they ask questions, had they taken any time to research any of this on their own, the questions that they're asking you. I think you guys did a good job. I appreciate you not throwing me under the bus, saying how terrible things are. Especially Jan, I think that when you talked about retention, that's kind of across the state, across the country, a significant issue.
Is Kevin wrapping or opening presents right now?
Well, Corky, what are you asking, that if we have any questions to you for clarifications, or that you want to have a dialogue between us? And if you're, I don't know, what would we do, guys?
I'm wondering if it's best if you wait either after the interviews or in between, so you can hear all the candidates first and see what their responses are. And then here's the kind of unofficial way, I think maybe use me as a good yes or BS monitor to, you know, gauge their responses on if you need some clarification. You know, just real quickly, the one about unions, one of the things you can think about for that is exactly what President Johnson pointed out, but another thing is grievances. I'm trying to think of when the last time was we had maybe one grievance over discipline in the last, gosh, I can't tell you, 10 years maybe. So that's a measuring stick too by what our relationship is with our two, you know, we actually have 3 units within the department, Teamsters, LALS, and then the electrical workers or whatever it is that represents the clerical staff.
And I guess maybe just a couple of things. First of all, just so you're aware, this is an open meeting. This is being live streamed. We do have people that have joined us, so just as a reminder. And then secondly, I think one of the things that I'm hearing being asked is if there are questions that the candidate has in regards to the police department, would it be okay for Corky to answer those questions? So council members, are you comfortable with that? And Corky, are you comfortable with answering candidate questions specific to the department?
Well, I'll be the first one to speak. I guess I would be okay with that, but I would leave it to the discretion of the president and the chief.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. I would like that. He has a better understanding of what's going on at the police department than any of us do, but I don't know. Like, kind of, Corky, what's your comfort level on answering questions for these candidates?
I'm fine with it if you are. Now that we've already started the process, I don't know if it's going to be fair going forward because that first guy didn't get that opportunity. So
Yeah.
now I don't necessarily know if that's probably something we should have discussed a little earlier. That'd be my only reservation, is it might not be the same level of fairness.
And Abe, I guess I wonder if by not having Corky involved, there's a little bit more of a possibility of being more of a neutral person too, that if we have questions at the end, or he can be, like he said, kind of let us know the BS factor.
Yeah. Well, we don't
want
to talk about it, discuss any of the individual candidates today in between the interviews. That's the one thing we're not going to do.
Okay.
But Kevin, you had something to add?
I would echo what Corky said. I think if we put Corky on the video, that might prompt some of the candidates to ask some deeper questions because the police chief is actually there. And since we already started the process, I think we have to stay consistent across the board and not allow Corky to do that. No offense to Corky.
Okay, well then that's the direction we'll take, and the next candidate, Kelly Bevins, can answer all the questions.
Safety and Public Works.
Yeah, no, anybody who, I think we'll just do it like, since we did that for the first candidate, when there's time for them to ask questions, I'll toss it out if any council member or the mayor has a response to give. And feel free to raise your hands, otherwise I'm just gonna make something up.
I'm also trying to scan before I go on to the next question too. So Gabe, you have a second set of eyes. So your next interview is Peyton Fleming, and it is at 1:40. And I think timing wise, that went pretty good.
Yeah, it went quicker than I thought. I don't know how come interviews for other positions take 45 minutes? Do we have more than 13 questions?
Maybe city administrators are more long-winded.
Probably. Cops don't want to say too much.
City administrator or anybody, I think just in person, it's more long-winded and more conversational.
Guys, since we have a little minute, I'm going to scoot off and do a little things, okay? I'll be back.
What if we said no? Would you stay?
You wouldn't want me to.
I'm also going to stop my video, but I'm right here at my desk, so I'll be paying attention. And when the candidate comes back on, I will jump back on as well.
And Mayor Bedeau, how did the event at the water tower go today?
It went fantastic. It was it's nice out today, but the wind is a little bit.
Okay.
So we definitely had to stay in the sun, and we handed out 100 cupcakes. So
Nice.
we had to chase a few people down, but I've never been shy when offering cupcakes. I'll tell you that. So it went really well. I think people enjoy stuff like that. So I was thinking, maybe we just need to start a program where the mayor just hands out donuts all the time. I think donuts would win over better, but that just might have to happen.
Now the cupcakes was a good beta test, so.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see. We did it on a Thursday, obviously, so but it would have been interesting to see how it would have went in the summer. I know that group wants to do something come summer or come spring for the 100th birthday as well, but this was like a nice way of just marking the day.
I know I shared that thing on my Facebook, but where were you actually located at? You posted up at?
We got permission from Mills to be right in the their parking lots that they've got right there. So
Okay.
they've actually got people moving back into the Lively building for their auto corporate headquarters. So they had some traffic in there, but not too much. So it went really well.
Cool. Yeah, I wish I could have made it down. I would like to grab some for the kiddos.
Yeah, and they're gone. But
yeah, right. For the kiddos. Yeah. Your daughter's going to really enjoy that cupcake. She's what, 6 months?
That was also the fun one. It was the people that came back for a second one and said, "Oh, can I get one for my kids?" And it was always kids, but then they just took one.
That would have been me.
Well, don't forget, there is such thing as dad tax. So
that's the best thing in the world. My toddler is 2.5 now. And so for Halloween, this was the first year that he got introduced to dad tax. And 14-year-old said, "That means dad just is stealing your candy."
Ted or Dave, I have a question for you. Can you send emails while you're on this meeting?
I'm sending one right now.
Oh, are you?
I'm talking with a parent of a student right now. So
Okay, so how do I go? Do I minimize this?
yeah, if you look in the upper right corner, there'll be 3 icons starting from the right side. There's an X, and then it looks like 2 pages, and then a minus. If you hit the 2 pages, you can downsize it so you still see the screen, or you could minimize it so it's just at the bottom. I've got 2 screens, so if you see me kind of gazing wistfully off to the side, I'm looking at the screen with all my kids' emails and homework assignments and stuff.
Okay, I see.
Or I'm playing Clash of Clans. No, I can't do that on this computer.
No, but I see you now, and then I have a line on the bottom. That's all I see. I don't have the opportunity to. Yeah. So okay.
If you hit escape, well, if you're full screen, a lot of times if you hit the escape key, that will downsize your screens.
Nope, you're still there.
It's harder to get rid of me than that, I'll tell you that.
Well, I will just.
Just send the email blind. Just leave it up to your typing skills and just.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Oops.
Jan, maybe you could dictate the email to Dave and he could send it.
There we go.
I like that idea. Oh, I was just outside getting the mail, letting the puppies out, and it's so cold with that wind. Like Dave was like, I turned the fireplace up, and oh, it feels so good.
Well, every time I stand up, I get mercilessly bullied by my two labs because I haven't thrown for them today. So I get circling me like, lions on the circuit. They got one. I said throw it. I got one over here right now.
They're ready to do it.
I have a pretty good vocabulary. I have to be careful what I say.
You'll have to start spelling, Dave.
We do. We do circumlocution where we go around the word, just not to say, things like retrieve and dummy and throw and.
But isn't it bad when they start knowing what the words are? Spelling them?
Well, it's interesting. There's some research on dogs, and like a good hunting dog, and some of these dogs have the same vocabulary as a 2 or 3-year-old. They can understand a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's the only animal besides humans that actually depend on being able to read human facial expressions in order to survive. So they look at the same side of your face that a person does, because one side tends to portray and convey emotions better than the other. It's pretty fascinating research on these things.
Well, I have
my whole table starts shaking. It's because I'm scratching her stomach and that leg starts to go. Should probably unplug everything.
Well, I know my puppies know when they've kind of did the last straw, and they kind of look at me like, we did it, let's go.
All
let's
right.
Go in the corner.
She just unplugged my other screen here. Come on, Brooke. Looks like it might be that time.
Good afternoon, you guys. How are you doing today?
Doing well.
Good afternoon.
Doing
I'm
well.
doing well.
Had some lab vandalism there. Go on, go lay down. Go lay down, good girl.
And Mr. President, if you just want to give me the go-ahead when you want me to start. Hey, Brent.
Let her rip, Jennifer.
Yep, Brent, I'm just looking at my schedule.
Yes.
I think you are in the community panel interview at this time.
Yeah. Did I get the council one? I thought I clicked on the other one. Maybe that got mixed up in my email then.
Very easy to do in this world of technology, but I do see you as a community panel interviewee at 1:40 p.m.
Okay. I will check out of this one and go to the other one. I appreciate it.
Bye,
Thank
Brent.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent.
And here I thought the original order had been changed on me. Flip my page.
Good catch, Jennifer. I was ready to go.
It's
Credit
called
goes-
flexibility.
The credit goes to Sean Strong. Thank you, Sean.
There's the correct candidate.
All right, welcome, Peyton. Go ahead, Jennifer. Start it off.
I apologize. I'm a couple seconds late. I didn't realize I was gonna have to sign in, so I apologize for that. But this is new to me too. So
Oh, the interview's already over. Sorry.
And no worries. So first of all, Peyton, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to interview with the council today. Under normal circumstances, the city council would be the ones doing or asking the questions, but because we're doing this virtually and on a pretty tight time frame, Gary has asked that I ask all of the questions. But first, I'd like to introduce our council. So they're going to wave as I say their name. We have Council President Gabe Johnson.
Hey.
Alderman Dave Pritchett, who is our Chair of Personnel and Finance. Alderman Kelly Bevins, who is our Chair of Safety and Public Works. Alderman Tad Erickson. Alderwoman Jan Lambert. Alderman Kevin Stunek. Mayor Dave Badeau. And then we also have Councilmember-elect Mike O'Day and Councilmember-elect Tiffany Stingline. Absent is Alderman Wayne Erickson. And I'm Jennifer Bergman. I'm the city administrator.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you also. With that, we do have 13 prepared questions for you, and we have 30 minutes. So we think about 2 to 3 minutes per question. And I'm going to start us off. And so here we go with our first question. Can you please tell us what interests you about this position and highlight key qualifications that make you the best person for this job?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I do have some notes in front of me. I hope it's okay if I use those during the process just to refresh my memory. So what attracted, I'm sorry, I'm already off. Can you repeat the question for me?
I sure can, and bear with me while I have to unmute. Please tell us what interests you about the position and highlight key qualifications that make you the best person for the job.
Sure. What interested me about the chief position is, first of all, I wasn't looking for a chief position, but when I saw this, I was immediately interested because my family and I have been to the area many times. We vacation there every year. I wasn't sure how everybody would react. I sent a text to my wife saying that Brainerd was looking for a police chief. She says, go for it. So I was happy about that. She works in healthcare, so there's a lot of opportunities up there for her as well. I started looking at the department specifically, and some things that stood out to me. There's a lot of similarities between Brainerd and where I am now in Mendota Heights, and then my time in the military where I was a chief there too. I started looking through doing some research on the department. Several things stood out to me. The mission statement, specifically about that they take the team approach to solving problems versus telling people how to solve their problems. Looking at the core values, a few things stood out. Integrity is very important to me. I think that's critical in law enforcement to earn people's trust. The recognition that they put in people. They recognize the dignity of the citizens and employees. Creativity. I appreciate that they value creativity, and it's not just a cookie cutter approach to policing, solving problems. The vision, there's a positive outlook on the future. I really like that. And then the support from the council and the community, that's really important. And then as far as qualifications for the job, this is something that I've been preparing for over 20 years, all the way back to when I was in college and doing leadership training and reserve officer training corps and the military, and then transitioning to law enforcement. Every job that I've had in the past, I feel, has led up to doing something like this, or being the police chief.
Thank you. Our next question, please describe your leadership and management style and the strategies you would use to manage staff in the department.
Sure. My leadership style is, number one, I believe in empowering people. Leading by example. I would never ask anyone to do anything I would not do myself. Always leading from the front. If there isn't what I do now and what I would continue to do, if there's not an incident, if I don't need to be removed from it for command purposes, I'd be right there with everybody else. Clear expectations, I think that's a very important one. Example of how I've done that in the past. Real quick, when I was as a patrol sergeant, one of the things that I did myself is to lay out clear expectations for my shift. I gave them 10 things of what I expected, and I'll just run through those real quick. First is be courteous and respectful. Number 2, back each other up. Number 3, be on time and ready for your shift so the other shift can go home on time. Let me know if there's something wrong. Bad news does not get better with time. And this is some department specific stuff, but reports must be completed prior to end of shift. Ask permission to hold reports. Be engaged while at work. Be proactive, and then 30 minutes of proactive policing per shift, and then ask questions. And then something that I've always strive to do is to learn something new every day. It's very important to me. and facilitating communication between people, I think, brings out the best in people. Delegating, like I said, is very important to me. I like to find the strengths in people and give each person a chance to do what they're best at and create a team and do a team effort, which I think delivers the best results. And did you ask about leadership style? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Yeah, leadership and management style.
Yeah, I guess if I had to assign us, I love reading about leadership. Like I said, back to when I was in school, it's always something that's interested me. It's very important to me. If I had to assign a specific type of leadership style, I think transformational leadership is important. And then what that is using your charisma to engage others and establish connections that increase employee or motivation so they can strive to do their best.
Thank you. Please describe your experience related to community policing and how you would bring that to the city of Brainerd.
Community policing is vital to our success in law enforcement. Some things that we've done in the past, Citizens Academy has been a huge success for us. I know that I see Brainerd does it as well. It's of course been put on hold this year, but something to continue in the future. The important thing about that is, how we really benefit is people will go through the program, and the best part is they learn, why police do things that they do, or how they do things that they do, where they might have had questions before. But the best part is that they spread the word. So they tell their friends, their neighbors in the community, hey, police department is doing great things. I went to the police academy. I saw what they do, how they do it, met the officers, and that helps to build positive community relations. Biggest thing, I think, is just being out and being visible. I've worked night shift in the past. I work days now, which when I was on nights, I would go around and, meet as many people as I can. Got to know other people that work at night really well, build those relationships. So when something does happen, they're more comfortable with contacting police or approaching us. And the best thing about now is I can actually get out when people are out. And now that more people are staying at home, there's more people out, more people to talk to. Just to stop and talk to them and say hi and ask how things are going. And that's the best way to find out what's going on in the community, because a lot of times people won't flag you down to tell you what's going on. But if you make the effort to stop and talk to them, they're more than willing to talk about stuff. So I think being out and being visible is very important, but also at a higher level, the programs, the Shop with the Cop, the Citizens Academy, that type of thing are very important.
Thank you. What have you done to further your knowledge, understanding about diversity in a community, and how have you demonstrated your knowledge?
My first job I ever had was probably in one of the most diverse organizations that there is, the Army. Can you say the first part of the question again? Sorry.
I sure can. What have you done to further your knowledge and understanding about diversity in a community?
Yeah, just meeting people. The area I work is diverse. Just talking to people, that's finding out more about them, cultures, traditions. There's a large Jewish population in Mendota Heights. There's a synagogue there, so working with the synagogue, learning more about their cultures. Like if you approach somebody, is there certain things that you should or should not do or say? Recently, during a department meeting, we had a rabbi come on and talk about some of that stuff, and it was very informative, very beneficial to the department, and doing things like that give people the knowledge to interact with people from different cultures and diverse populations. As far as demonstrating it, like to think that I demonstrate it every day when I interact with people. Right now, we don't have the best relationship with some people, but I think just making that effort to talk to them and in certain instances educate them on how or why we do things. One quick example, recently we were at a disturbance. We have a hotel in the city where there's a lot of problems. We were dealing with a gentleman who said he was assaulted by somebody else. There was another guy who was kind of involved. He knew the person who had allegedly assaulted this guy, and he was kind of going back and forth, and he was saying things to the victim there that just weren't helping. And I just said, can you just stop for a second? You're not helping. Well, he took that the wrong way and he stormed off. Before that, I had asked him to get, I think, the suspect's phone number or something like that. So he stormed off. He ended up coming back, and I asked him, were you able to get that phone number that I asked you about? And he says, nope, you said I wasn't helping. I'm not doing anything. Okay. So after it was over, he was hanging around, and I just said, hey, can I talk to you for a second? So he agreed to, came up, and we had a great conversation. And I wanted him to know why we did the things, or why I said what I said, that I just said, you're not helping right now. And then, I just said I wasn't trying to come off as abrasive or anything like that. I was just trying to deal with the situation. And I explained to him how what he was saying was only getting the victim, the person that we were talking to, only more amped up, and that didn't help. And so once I explained it to him, he understood. And I think that's key to dealing with others, other cultures, diverse groups, is that communication is the key. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Describe a time when you made a mistake at work. How did you deal with the situation, and what was the outcome?
First, I think as law enforcement, one thing we don't do well is admit when we make mistakes. And that's one thing that I try to stress on those that I work with. One one specific incident that comes to mind is I was I was supervising patrol, and one of the officers had gone out in one of the parks with a group of people, and bottom line, he decided that he was going to cite them. Personally, I think it was one of those situations where education could have been more beneficial than enforcement. So I asked him what he was going to do. He said he was going to write a ticket, and I don't know if I think I sighed or I said something, and there was other people around, and he ended up finishing, and he left, and I asked to meet up with him later, and I said, what happened there when I said what I said, or the facial expression or whatever I did, I was wrong, and I apologize for that. I said I should not have done that, and the fact that there was other people there, I should not have done that, especially in front of them. So I think as a leader, that builds a lot of respect, or you're able to earn a lot of respect, is to say that you're wrong, because there's so many people that I've worked with, and I know everybody works with, who's just hard-headed and won't admit that they were wrong, and it's hard to work with them. So I think being a little bit humble is a good trait.
Thank you. Can you describe an experience where you had to respond to and resolve a difficult and sensitive community member inquiry or complaint?
Yes. I was kind of goes to, it's a little bit of an ethical dilemma. It's not a dilemma because there's no question that you have to do the right thing. But I was on patrol one night, and there was a group of people at one of our bars that they were in the parking lot. I drove by. They work for a neighboring jurisdiction police department, and I drove by. They waved, didn't stop, and about an hour later, I received a call that an assault had taken place at that establishment. And the victim said that the suspects said that they were police officers, but from a different jurisdiction. And immediately I knew that it was them, or it was very likely that it was them. So I proceeded as I normally would in that case. I was not a supervisor at the time, but I just informed my supervisor, this is what I have going on, and this is what I'm going to do. He concurred, and I investigated the assault as I would with anybody else. And they did end up getting charged and whatnot. But the important thing is handling sensitive things like that with community members. I had another incident with a department head now who was not a department head at the time. There was some alleged disturbance that he was involved in, and again, I handled it the same way that I would have with anybody else. In this job, it's important not to show favoritism. It diminishes public trust. It takes away from everything that we do. And it's important that people know that they can trust us to do what is right every time.
Thank you. Can you describe any partnership you have been a part of creating? How did building these type of relationships benefit the community or the organization where you worked?
Creating relationships. I know I've done it. I'm just trying to think of an example. Can we come back to that one?
Absolutely. Next question, describe a situation that you feel demonstrates your integrity and ethical standards. And maybe you've answered that. But
that's probably in my career, that one always stands out. So if I can use that example again, let me see if I can think of an ethical situation. I come across them all the time. People try to give us things all the time, and it's explain that we can't take them. It's hard. It's hard for people to understand that, but it's important that we maintain that level of trust. The other day I was at Subway. Somebody tried to give me a gift card, and they had left, and I just tried to explain to the clerk, and it went back and forth for a couple of minutes. Like, please take it, please take it. I'm like, I would love to, but I can't. So please give it to the next person. Pass it on. So yeah, the one example, and then the fact that I come across them all the time, and it's just, like I said, it's just important to always do the right thing. And my definition of integrity is doing the right thing when nobody is looking.
thank you. If you're hired for this position and you're still with the organization 5 years from now, how do you think the department will be different?
I like to think that it would be better. One of the things that I always do is make an effort to, when I go to work, is how can I make the people that I work with, how can I make their job better? It's something I strive to do every day. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens little things. Sometimes it happens big things. One of the things that I have always done is when I see a problem or an issue, I identify it and I try to fix the problem. If there's something that is needed, I do whatever it takes to get it. And there's a couple examples. I was able to get the department additional body armor. When the school shootings and things like that started in an uptick nationwide, there was the need for the additional equipment to protect our officers. So I researched plate carriers, one to have in each squad car, and did everything, presented it. Initially, I was denied. So I took a step back, reevaluated, reapproached it, and got it approved. So I was able to get body armor for everybody. Another example, I went to a course a few years ago. It's called Raider. It's a Raider program. It's a solo response to active shooter. We're the only department that didn't have optics on our patrol rifles, and dealing with those type of situations, it's key. The types of shots that if you had to take one, it would be in close quarters and other people around. So the need for that type of equipment was necessary. I came back after the training, approached my chief on it. Was initially turned down because I realized that I approached the need for them from the wrong angle. So I took a step back again, reevaluated, and then reapproached, and then was given the go ahead and the funds to go ahead and procure those rifles. So as far as how the Brainerd Police Department will be better in 5 years, until I am there and able to see what or how I can help, it's hard to say specifically what, but I can tell you it will be. And I would be thrilled to be able to come in and look at everything and see how I can help and make things better.
Thanks, Peyton. And just a reminder, we have 4 questions left and probably about 8 minutes. So our next question, could you discuss your philosophy and techniques related to retention of law enforcement personnel? Yes, I'll try to be quick. This is another issue that I'm very passionate about. When I went to Northwestern, I did my project on recruiting and retention. I'm in a public policy class right now, and I did a public policy paper on recruiting and retention. We need to recruit, train, and retain the right people for the right job as police officers. There's ways that we can do that. We make sure that they're engaged, that they're trained properly. One of the other areas where I kind of like looking at stuff is, with the population that's coming in right now with the age group, the millennials, things for training and retaining millennials. There's things that can be done for them, and I just have a couple things written down here. If I can just quick. It's working in groups, adapt at using technology. They desire regular feedback. They're motivated differently. They're motivated by a sense of progress, opportunity to create a sense of doing what matters. They want to give back to the community, more concerned with helping people and getting a higher salary, and then flexibility, that work-life balance. So it's hiring, training, retaining the right people for the right job. And when they're there, we give them the tools, everything that they need to be successful. And if we do that, that's what's going to make them stay. I know that Brainerd's had some issues with the officers leaving for other departments. We've had issues or a lot of high turnover with medical stuff, and it's an issue that's going to continue, and something that I'm very interested in, passionate about. And there's a lot of things that can be done. And thank you. If you could go back to when you were first thinking about police work as a career, what advice would you give yourself? I would say, if you're going to go to school for police work, get a degree in something other than police work, for a couple of different reasons. This is something that the people that I work with, a lot of times they'll ask about going back to school. I always say, go to school. Don't get a lot of them have, say somebody has a 2-year degree, for example, and they're going to go back to school. I want to get a degree in law enforcement. You already have the job. Why would you want to get a degree in law enforcement? Do something that you think that you will like, that will help you at work, not specific to law enforcement. Do something public administration, leadership. Financial crimes are a big thing right now. Finance, fraud, something like that. So I always say, if somebody told me or told you can't be a cop tomorrow, what are you going to do? You have to have something to fall back on. So I would say the advice that I would give myself back then is to
do more education wise non-law enforcement. So you have a more diverse education of other things to draw on besides criminal justice related stuff.
Thank you. Why should the Brainerd City Council select you as their next police chief?
I believe that I am I know I have the experience necessary for the position. I've been working towards this for a long time. I've held other positions, and I think this is the next logical step. But what I believe separates me is my leadership experience. Right out of college, I was entrusted with the care of others. As a young platoon leader in the Army, I took that very seriously. I still do. I always focus not only on the people and the work, but the whole person. Because I know that if everything is good outside of work, they're more likely to be engaged and successful at work. This is something that I've done and I continue to do today. I know that, of course, there's restrictions on what can and what can't be said between a supervisor and an employee, but to me, the important thing is to know that the people that work for me or I work with, that I care about them as a whole person and I want them to be the best. That's the one thing that I always try to do, is to empower people to do things so they can be better. If the group as a whole is better, if the officers are better, the department's going to be better, and that's going to mean that the city is better because people are going to be engaged, they're going to want to be there, and they're going to do great things every day.
Thank you. And then we have about 2 minutes left. So do you have any questions for us?
I do not. I have done a lot of research, so I've answered a lot of my questions, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and go through this process and hope to meet everybody in person soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, Peyton.
Thanks. Can I just go ahead and sign out now? Is that okay? All right.
Thank you, Peyton.
Thanks.
And Mr. President, I see we did have another caller join us with the last 2 digits of 92. I assume that our interview candidates will be joining us via video. Just wanted to.
Yeah, not from a 288 number, I'll tell you that.
You're right. Good point. Thank you.
And we scared him away. So next up in 5 minutes is Ty Sharp.
I have to unmute. That's what I have. Ty Sharp at 2:15. I'm going to take a restroom break.
So Jennifer, I have 2:15 now, so as soon as Mr. Sharp logs in, just get it going with introductions and everything.
You got it. Will do. I just messaged Sean too, just to see if he has heard from Ty in case there are any technical difficulties. Hi, Ty.
Good afternoon. Sorry about that. For a second there, my video was pointing in the wrong direction, which I've never had before. It took me a second to figure out how to get it back.
No worries. We're kind of adjusting to technology, so thank you.
Right.
So council member president has just asked me to go ahead and get us started. So first of all, I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to interview with the city council today. Under normal circumstances, The council would actually be the one asking the questions, but because we're doing this virtual and we have a pretty tight time frame, Gary Weirs has asked that I ask all the questions. But I would like to take a moment to introduce our city council members. They're going to wave as their name is called. So we have Council President Gabe Johnson, Alderman Dave Pritchett, who's the chair of Personnel and Finance.
Okay.
We have Alderman Kelly Bevins, who is the chair of Safety and Public Works. Alderman Tad Erickson. Alderwoman Jan Lambert. Alderman Kevin Stunick. Mayor Dave Badeau. And then we also have Councilmember-elect Mike O'Day. Councilmember-elect Tiffany Stingline. Absent is Alderman Wayne Erickson, and I'm Jennifer Bergman. I'm the city administrator. So we have scheduled 35 minutes for this interview, and we have 13 questions prepared for you. Just so I don't lose track of time, I do have an alarm set when we have 5 minutes left. So we thank you for your patience and cooperation with these virtual videos. And I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Our first question is, please tell us what interests you about the position and highlight key qualifications that make you the best person for the job.
But yeah, well, thank you for having me. Firstly, I just scrolled across and there's a lot of people on this video, so appreciate your time and taking the time to meet with us and do it this way as well. This is helpful. The area is appealing. The size of the city is appealing. As I move through my career, taking those next steps without overwhelming myself or taking a too big a step is obviously the way I try to do my work and my experience, and that would be coming over to Brainerd. It's just a great sized city with the surrounding area, and you can't beat the way of life out there. So career-wise, experience, I just I've been through a lot with agencies I've worked for. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of stuff, gain experience in areas that we don't always see up here, and we definitely don't see often. Just had this conversation the other day about bank robberies, and where I worked, we saw those daily and monthly, and although I didn't work them all, every single one, you just get experience of how to work that stuff, and some of that stuff is life learned versus getting it in the book. I've also completed the Northwestern Police Leadership Academy. 26 weeks, takes about 6.5 months to do. Completed that, gained some valuable leadership skills. FBI leader courses, and then I got my master's, or 3/4 of my master's. I got the master's certificate, which is the police leadership portion, and I'm just getting the final part to get the actual master's designation. And then ultimately for some of that is to go off and do some give back in some of these local colleges and universities.
Thank you. Please describe your leadership and management style and the strategies you would use to manage staff in the department.
So I'm definitely always have been a leader from the front. That's my style. Obviously, the higher you go, you can't learn. You don't know everything, but you've got to have an understanding of everything that we do. So, and I think that's definitely my leadership style from the first time I became a supervisor. I was, again, lucky enough to work in a large department that had all those sergeants available. So you could see which were good sergeants, which were good leaders, learn from some, lose from some. And I think I took some of that as I've gone through my career path. And then as I came here in Dilworth, I always wanted to be a working chief. I don't want to be a sit behind the counter chief. Obviously, there's things you have to do as a chief. You have to do the budget. You have to do discipline. You have to do policy. You have to do meetings. But I also want to be an out and about chief, and a chief that goes out and helps these people. And that's what I believe I do. I believe that's my style. And will always be someone that's up there pitching in wherever possible.
Thank you. Please describe your experience related to community policing and how you would bring that to the city of Brainerd.
So again, it all comes down from experience. Where I worked, we were when I first became very, very off the street, for 50,000. It was a very violent city, a very busy city. Our officers are ending, take 20 officers.
Ty? Ty, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're kind of choppy. I'm wondering if maybe if you could turn off your video, if that may help. Yeah, it's really choppy.
Sean or Jennifer, can you mute the new telephone caller?
Thank you. Maybe if you want to say something again. It is not working better. You're still very choppy. Gabe, could you understand him?
No, I couldn't. Perhaps Ty could call in on his phone.
So how about
Or
do you want me to?
He's
A
asked.
call in would work
cancel.
best at this point, Ty, so we can at least hear your answers to the questions.
Okay. How about let me cancel and get back in and see if that works. 1 second.
Jennifer, maybe you want to check with Gary, like what the procedure should be when there's technical difficulties. I mean, are we gonna have to add him back on at the end of the day or what?
I'll reach out to him right now.
Jennifer, you're kind of cutting out to me too.
I'm back. Does that help?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Because we have 6 or 5 bars here.
You sound good now, Ty. Let's continue on.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me just pick up where I was stating then. So when I came here to Dilworth, I noticed that we had a gap between school and summer. There wasn't really a summer program. We created a program where we go out into the park 3 days a week. We bring lunch. We bring a bag full of games, and then we spend a whole hour there with kids families, parents, anyone that wants to show up. We offer lunch. We're in our 4th year of that now, and we're now starting to see the benefits of being with those kids 3 days a week. They come up to us quite often during the school year when we're at the stores. They come up to us when we're off duty and they remember us and things like that. So I've really seen some of those community programs. We've expanded that into different avenues now. We now do a winter program. We've done a couple of school programs where we're going in during the school year and moving that. So I really think that our community policing has really grown with our youth, and the youth is who we've been targeting here, and getting the officers to buy into that, and that's been a huge success for us.
Thank you, Ty, and the connection seems much better. What have you done to further your knowledge and understanding about diversity in a community, and how have you demonstrated your knowledge?
So, yeah, the Do What's Up is a very small community. We're FBI leadership. Building on some of those terms, even gets involved and developed, gets and improved, updated, and re-looked at again. But the 21st century policing is what everyone's looking at, and I think that the whole part of that is just coming back to a chief being available. Ever since I started as a sergeant, I always put my cell phone on my business cards. I still hear it today that's crazy. People call you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that doesn't happen. But again, it shows that you're available and you're out there ready. So I spend a lot of time out in the community. We have several churches here and several different organizations. The Lions, the Lady Lions are here. We have a couple of drug support groups, and it's just making sure that we do kind of do the rounds. The chief is the person that's out there doing the rounds, the same as the officers. It's getting out of the vehicle and taking the time to visit with the stores and the businesses and everyone that lives in your town.
Thanks, Ty. Can you describe a time when you made a mistake at work? How did you deal with the situation, and what was the outcome?
Yeah, that's probably happened a lot. No one's great at this job. We all try and do our very best. We wouldn't be in the job if we weren't trying to do our very best. I think when I first, one of the things that, I came from a department of 100 officers. I knew everybody and I knew a core group very well, but you knew everyone, but you only knew, you knew by name and you didn't always work with them, but you knew there's always certain employees that some you really like working with, some you don't, some that, do more than they should, some that can do more than they try and take on. When I came here I actually came to a smaller department thinking, it would just be a greater environment. We would all get on. We'd all be brothers, sisters. We'd all, spend, all our weekends together and just be a really close-knit family. And unfortunately, when I got here, it wasn't that way. The same problems you have in a big department. You have some people that weren't getting on. Not everyone gels together. And I brought my big city fast pace to this small town, and kind of tried to run before I walked. I mean, I knew, some things. I'd been given advice on what I should do and how to be a chief, and some of that advice was really good. But obviously, I did take a little bit too much of my ability over what I thought I was coming into, and I definitely made a mistake. I knew what I was going to do, what they want me to do here as a chief, and I, tried to run a little faster than we should have. It's all worked out. We've done really well. I love every guy that works here, and girl. We have a great reputation now as a department, and we all get on very well. It was just slower baby steps may have helped.
Thank you. Describe an experience where you have had to respond to and resolve a difficult and sensitive community member inquiry or complaint.
Well, shoosh. I can't think of one offhand that was a difficult or sensitive. I get complaints. We get complaints on officers. No more, no less than anyone else. A lot of times, the general public, they may get a ticket, and that makes them, angry, and then concerned that they weren't treated the best, or that the officer did something different to them than they would have done to someone else. So, I think it just comes down to handling everything the same. We recently just redid our mission statement here and our goals. And one of the things I wanted to get all the officers in on this. We have a new set of officers since I first started. And I think they needed to all buy into something good. Something that came up that I ran with is we call it ACT, ACT, and it's act with the highest integrity, professionalism, and respect. And the ACT breaks down to achieve community trust. And we've been pushing that out to the officers. They now have to have it as a tagline on their email. So at the end of the day, when they're sending emails, they're reading it. It's short. It's to the point. The ACT part is the part that we look at most of the time, which is just with the highest integrity and professionalism. And I think that's just getting that as the base knowledge that, all the officers, when they're out there talking to people, they're dealing with some of these complaints, they're dealing with themselves, and they're actually the first line. When it gets to me, and same thing, it's just being involved, treating every person with respect, each person with professionalism, and dealing with their problem as though that is your only problem at the time.
Thank you. Describe any partnerships you've been a part of creating, and how did building these types of relationships benefit the community or organization you worked for?
So I think we've done a really good job here, and I don't toot my horn that often. It definitely was a group project. We've done it. I have some great people working for me. But the community program, I said, the Lunch with a Cop, we've two that I'm really proud of. The Lunch with a Cop, we started that the first year. We saw this huge gap. I went to a couple of businesses around town. We're a smaller town for restaurants, so I had to branch out into Moorhead. But I went to a Jimmy John's, and I went to a Qdoba, and our local pizza ranch. And I asked them if they'd be willing to take a day of this Lunch with a Cop and supply lunches. And Jimmy John's was fantastic. They actually said, we'll do the whole thing, and we didn't need that at the time. So they did, everyone took a day, and they did the whole summer, 13 weeks, every day. I mean, the Jimmy John's alone is like a $220 investment per day. The second year, we dropped the Qdoba. The kids weren't that interested in Mexican rice and beans, but that's okay. Jimmy John's and Pizza Ranch picked up the difference the second year. Third year, same thing. This year, because of the COVID, it's tough. We know our Pizza Ranch is suffering. I mean, I see it every day. They're not open. The manager's the one basically running the whole show. There's no way I could go to them and ask them to support this Lunch with a Cop program, but there was no reason. I didn't want to stop the Lunch with a Cop program. I mean, it's so important to us to make those connections and have these kids have something outside. It's outside. It's running around. We're socially distanced. It's not, there was no reason not to do it. So we put the word out. We got some donations locally. I had a couple of Walmart helps us with some fruit and vegetable stuff for it. I put the thing on our Facebook page that, we were going to struggle this year, and unfortunately I didn't feel it was appropriate to visit our businesses. And within hours we had people dropping off $100 gift cards to Cashwise, to Walmart, to Aldi. We ended up with about $2,500 in gift cards. We had to modify the lunch with the cart. We went out and bought hot dogs, and we basically cooked it ourselves and took it out and did it that way versus bringing pre-prepared food. But we were still able to get the program going, and we were still able to use the community. The community just rallied around it. Just quite quickly, we just started a community therapy dog program, something I've been looking at for a couple of years. The city was very much for it. Again, what's the cost of a community therapy dog? It's a lot less than a canine. But again, we had a town, our local bank. I went to them and said, this is the program I want to do. This is the cost. City loves sure. And we'll pay for the lot, we'll get it done, and we'll be the sponsors for that program until you decide to do it anymore. So, having those community relationships, being able to visit some of those people and just know the good times and the bad times. That's what I think I'm trying to get across is, Pizza Ranch was great to us for 4 years. We're not going to go begging for help when we know that they're suffering just as hard as anyone else. So, but the community rallied around.
Thank you. And so, Ty, we've got about a little over 5 minutes left, and we still have, I think, like 6 questions. So, describe a situation that you feel demonstrates your integrity and ethical standards.
I know. Again, I think it's just how you're brought up and how you're trained. We start. Towns find it difficult. It's a week in the car with an officer, and it's a no. I think that just comes down to the people will. Ethics.
Thank you. If you're hired for this position and are still with the organization 5 years from now, how do you think the department will be different?
So, I like to train everyone coming in to be able to run a case, obviously, depending what the case is. But, your thefts, your burglaries, they should be able to run a case. I would hope that 5 years that are trained ready to take the next spot up and those positions fill them. Decided not. It's just that lack. There is some lack in some of these trainings between being book trained and then being able to actually do the job for the department. And I think we need to bridge that gap.
Thank you, Ty. Could you discuss your philosophy and techniques relating to retention of law enforcement personnel?
We have meetings on a regular. It's mandatory to come. Obviously, there's if you have family or can't get here, there's reasons for that. But otherwise, we have mandatory meetings every month. Everyone has to come to the table and bring something to it. So you don't just come sit there and the officers are actually now bringing problems that one man department one at a time. That information gets lost. We share together, and kind of a meal.
Thank you. If you could go back to when you were first thinking about police work as a career, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, you know why? I have a guy that I just hired right now. He's the youngest person I've ever hired to be a police officer. The application, and we hired him. Would be what you think's right, what you think's good, what you think's bad. I still see things years, and it just time learn the craft, like do the best that you can.
Thank you. Why should the Brainerd City Council select you as their next chief?
Yeah, there's a lot of people on this list, and they're all highly qualified. I know I know I've got some education, and I know I've got the some experience. I believe that by far that I'm one of the best. If you're the best, or not be put in for the position. Track record of what I've done. I've got some great community programs. I've got some of what a police department needs to be, how we lead it, and he's done a fantastic job in Brainerd. We make things better. We tweak. I have a saying that why are we changing this? It's always been done that way, but why are we not? That's what I always say about why would we not change it? Give it a go. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we can always go back. But I think at the end of the day, you're just steering the ship, and you're just making sure that that you tweak things here and there, and that's it. The leader is just the person that keeps the ship pointing in the right direction.
Thanks, Ty. And with about 1 minute, do you have any questions of us, of the City Council?
No, not at this time. I'm, everything's it's moving along, and I appreciate your time and taking this time out. Like I said, there was a lot of you on the phone call, so hopefully I've answered some of those questions. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Well, Ty, thanks for joining us, and thank you for answering our questions. And I think Gary will be in touch with you in the future.
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you for your time.
So we've got 2 minutes now before the next candidate shows up, so we don't really have time for breaks or anything.
Yeah, that was tough. The connection, I was able to kind of get the gist of what he was saying. I hope you guys were able to at least get the gist.
Yeah, I don't know what Gary's going to say about the technical difficulties, but perhaps we give all the candidates an opportunity for written answers to our questions after it's all done or something. I don't know what would be normal. So we'll just have to ask Gary that.
I did email him and he said, I just said that he was having some difficulty and it was, tell him that time is limited, encourage him to answer the questions briefly. I see our next candidate is joining.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Vinson.
Thank you, sir.
And it's 2:50, Jennifer, so you can get it going.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, welcome, George. We would like to thank you for taking the time to interview with the City Council today. Under normal circumstances, the City Council would be the ones asking the questions, but because we're doing this virtually and we have a pretty tight time frame, Gary has asked that I ask all the questions. But I'd first just like to take a moment to introduce our City Council members so you know who they are. Council President Gabe Johnson, Alderman Dave Pritchett, who's our Chair of Personnel and Finance, Alderman Kelly Bevins, who's our Chair of Safety and Public Works, Alderman Tad Erickson, Alderwoman Jan Lambert, Alderman Kevin Stunek, Mayor Dave Badeau, Councilmember-elect Mike O'Day, and then Councilmember-elect Tiffany Stingline. Absent is Alderman Wayne Erickson. He wasn't able to attend, and I am Jennifer Bergman. I'm the city administrator. So we've scheduled 35 minutes for this interview, and the council has 13 prepared questions for you. We would just ask that you please be mindful of the time, about 2 to 3 minutes per question. So I don't lose track of time. I have set an alarm. So when there's 5 minutes left, my alarm will go off. So thank you for your patience, and I am going to go ahead and get us started with the first question. Please tell us what interests you about this position and highlight key qualifications that make you the best person for this job.
Thank you. So I think what really attracts me to Brainerd is I was born and raised in Minnesota. My father, my brother are both in law enforcement. I wanted to be in law enforcement from the time I was in high school. I went to MSUM Moorhead for criminal justice. I graduated there. I had every intention of working in a small town or mid-sized agency in Minnesota. And Fargo was hiring at the time. I needed a job. I applied, and 17 years later, here I am. What I'd really like to do is get back to a community like Brainerd, Brainerd specifically because I'm an outdoors person. I love what Brainerd has to offer in terms of, hunting, fishing, the outdoors side of it. But really, the community of Brainerd is similar to what I'm experienced with in the fact that Brainerd and Baxter are kind of cities together. Fargo and Moorhead are cities together, partnering with each other to make a better metro-wide area. And during the time that I've been working with the Fargo Police Department, I've had the opportunity, which I'm very grateful for, to be involved in so many different public safety things, whether it's as a detective or a canine handler or a use of force instructor. All of those different experiences will help me come to the city of Brainerd to be a partner in making sure that Brainerd remains a safe place, a great place to live, work, and stay. And I feel like the experiences that I've gained and the community partnerships that I've built in Fargo, I can replicate those efforts and improve upon those efforts to be a great chief for you in the city of Brainerd.
Thank you. Please describe your leadership and management styles and the strategies you would use to manage staff in the department.
My leadership management style, I prefer to listen first when I can. If it's not a critical emergency type situation, it's very important to me to get input from various stakeholders, whether it's employees or the community at large, the council in this case, to make sure that we're making the right decisions for the community, making sure that we're tapping the skills, knowledge, and abilities of our officers. They're going to have a wide range of strengths that we need to tap into, and getting that input is critical to making the right decision. That's probably the first step in my leadership management style. That I understand everyone's perspective after having listened to them is the next step, and making a decision based on that. Not only making the decision, but also explaining the why behind it to particularly the officers that may not agree with the decision. I've learned through experience, through my master's education, that millennials demand the why behind decision making, and it's important that you provide that, so that not only that they understand the why if we didn't go in their direction, but also so that they can kind of get a bigger picture look at what the decision all encompassed, and try to alter their behavior based on that why, so that they can maximize their ability as well.
Thank you. Please describe your experience related to community policing and how you would bring that to the city of Brainerd.
So we are a very progressive police department in Fargo. We have just created in 2020 a community engagement team. That is a group of about 15 of us that our sole purpose is community policing, engaging the community in positive, proactive ways. I was selected to be the command officer for that team because of the talents and sort of the predispositions that I had in those areas. Building relationships, building trust is so important to me. And that's how we lead our community engagement team into not only community-wide events, but also in some of our sub-communities, such as our ULAND association. That ULAND stands for United Liberian Association of North Dakota. Annually, they have a soccer tournament on July 25th. That's their Independence Day. We participate in that soccer tournament to build relationships, get exercise, interact with the public in a proactive and positive way, so that when crisis occurs, those folks can trust their police department. They have confidence in what we do. They know that we're human, just like everyone else, and that we have their best interests at heart. And so that community policing is so important to me. That partnership with not only community members, but social service agencies, city leaders such as yourselves, other law enforcement agencies, as I alluded to earlier, the unique situation of having two cities together, and obviously county sheriff, building those relationships to make sure that we all work together well to serve the people that we care about is important. So bringing that community-oriented policing that I have so much experience into Brainerd is something I'm very excited about, and would be at the top of my list.
Thank you. What have you done to further your knowledge and understanding about diversity in a community, and how have you demonstrated your knowledge?
So on May 30th, 2020, the city of Fargo experienced quite a difficult situation with some of the protests that resulted out of the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. Those protests that day turned into riots, where people were breaking windows, trying to burn buildings down in downtown Fargo. And we utilized various crowd dispersal tactics to include gassing and loud flashbangs. And that caused some injury to our community long term, in that people not everyone agreed with that decision. And so in the months after that, I had the opportunity to be our department's liaison to the newly formed Black Lives Matter chapter in Fargo-Moorhead, and having discussions with their board members and our mayor all in the same room to try to understand perspective, try to first listen to see what the concerns are. Also then to share perspective. Sometimes a police department has to act in a certain way because of state law. Sometimes we fall short. Sometimes we need to learn and grow, and we do that via that dialogue. And so those diverse perspectives coming in to make educated decisions to make the community better is something that I've had the opportunity to be very involved in over the last 6, 8, 10 months specifically, but Also, just over previously in my career, having supervised our cultural liaison officer, interacts with our new American population, Somali, Sudanese, Congolese, Bhutanese, all of those individuals coming into Fargo having different religions, different beliefs, and getting input from them, making them feel welcome as part of the community as a whole, and trusting their police department to make sure that their community remains safe is critically important.
Thank you. Can you describe a time when you made a mistake at work? How did you deal with the situation and what was the outcome?
I think the most recent mistake I made at work, unfortunately, I make a few more than I'd like at times, like a lot of us do. Currently, I'm the manager for grants within our police department. I just took that over from our deputy chief that retired. And so in managing grants, one needs a high level of attention to detail and communication with the granting authority. Well, in this case, what I did was I was putting together grant details for our department, and I wasn't communicating the necessary details back to the Department of Emergency Services in North Dakota. And in the end, what happened was I authorized overtime expenses for our officers that didn't meet the grant requirements, and therefore it cost the city money out of our own coffers because of the mistakes that I had made there. And what I learned out of that is those types of decisions, I was teaching myself because I had no formal training. And so while I did a good job overall, I fell down in a few areas, that being one of them. And what I learned out of that was I don't need to work so quickly on situations like that because I have time to consult with people. I have time to consult with people that know more about that type of issue. That wasn't a strength of mine at the time. And so I'm building the relationships with people that do have those strengths, relying on their advice, something that I kind of knew beforehand, of course, but, sort of had that driven home to me in that situation.
Thank you. Can you describe an experience where you've had to respond to and resolve a difficult and sensitive community member inquiry or complaint?
So I think I'll point to a situation that I learned about here a few months ago. I'm currently the commander for our school resource officers, and I'm also our liaison to our Human Relations Commission. And so at one of the recent Human Relations Commission meetings, one of the commissioners had mentioned how an SRO had acted inappropriately, had an inappropriate interaction with a student that is transgender. And that's not something that, unfortunately, we get a lot of training in the police academy. And so that has to be something that comes along after the fact. And that natural curiosity of the SRO was portrayed in a negative, non-productive way. And so that was a very sensitive issue for that student and that Human Relations Commission member. And so responding to that, what we did was, obviously demonstrate empathy, communicate, apologize. And actually tomorrow we're having training for all of our SROs, myself included, on LGBTQ plus sensitivity issues, and not just the canned courses, they're real conversations. And that's one thing that, in the conversations that I've had with Black Lives Matter and some of the activist organizations in Fargo since May, is those real conversations that after you've built that relationship and someone opens up to you and says, I feel like I'm being targeted because XYZ, and just really allowing those folks to put that out into the open, and then having that dialogue about it really tends to help someone feel like they matter, like someone's listening, that we care. And that's what we're trying to do with this LGBTQ plus trip up that we've had here recently.
Thank you. Describe any partnerships you've been a part of creating. How did building these types of relationships benefit the community or the organization that you worked for?
I think for that example, I'll use our juvenile diversion program. In the interest of time, studies show that kids that commit low-level criminal offenses that are introduced to the criminal justice system, juvenile court, for example, studies show that the earlier they're introduced, the more often they're introduced, the more likely they are to stay in the justice system their entire life. And so trying to come up with innovative ways to address those issues while still getting the juvenile the assistance that they need was a goal of ours. And so what I created was a diversion program for certain criminal offenses that are low-level offenses, that instead of the kid going to juvenile court, they go to a social service provider, one that we partner with. So as a specific example, I'll say Lutheran Social Services. They offer youth court and restorative justice, offender accountability type classes for the kids. And so instead of going to juvenile court, they go to this class, and it's not just a check the box kind of thing. It's a meaningful experience for the kid that gives them the social emotional wellness learning that they need, and also the wraparound services that really in most cases the family needs to solve some of those behavioral crises that the kid is experiencing. And so having those partnerships with the public schools, the social service providers, for all of us to be on the same page, and then creating what we call the Regional Behavior Review Board. And what that was, kids that don't respond to traditional school discipline are referred to this multidisciplinary board, and that consists obviously police, schools, counselors, social services, service providers. And so everyone gets around the table, they listen to all of the issues, the facts that are going on, and then we think together of an appropriate outcome. Sometimes it's police related, many times it's not. It's social services related, or it's some type of mentorship programming through YouthWorks. Providing the appropriate remedy is critical for that. And if you don't have the relationships built and the partnerships built with those different organizations, that can't happen. And so that's why that's so important.
Thank you. Describe a situation that you feel demonstrates your integrity and your ethical standards.
Integrity and ethical standards. So as a district commander, my role last year and in previous years, I oversee at any given point between 40 and 50 employees. And at times, we encounter situations that aren't, as I indicated earlier, effectively dealt with by the police. So I want to give an example of last year being the commander for the downtown area of Fargo, addressing some of the homelessness issues that we have in Fargo and some of the crimes that come along with that, whether it be panhandling or consuming in public. And those folks suffering from chemical dependency, mental health crisis, and how we address those issues really kind of define our integrity and our ethical, how ethical we are. And so can we simply just hang panhandling tickets on these people and just move on about our day? Sure, we can, but we have a greater commitment to our community to serve those individuals in a way that helps them get out of the cycle that they're in. That's not to say that we shouldn't hold them accountable for bad behavior. What that is to say is we have a bigger part in making sure that they're referred to the right people, whether that's homeless health or shelters. And that demonstrates, at least to me, my goal in addition to serving those people was to show the employees that report to me that I have a high level of integrity. Ethically, could I have just hang tickets on them, threw them in jail, been disrespectful, say things like "get out of here, you're not welcome here," those kinds of things? Yeah, there are officers that have done that, unfortunately. But what these officers that work that area needed was a leader that did stand up for what was ethically correct and what the high integrity that I hold myself to. So that's probably one of the most recent examples on a larger scale that I can share with you.
Thank you. If you are hired for this position and you're still with the organization 5 years from now, how do you think the department will be different?
Oh, great question. So it's hard for me to answer that because I'm not there now. So I don't know all of the intricacies that currently exist. But in 5 years from now, if we were to ask the normal Brainerd citizen what they believe about their police department, they're going to say that their police department is engaged, that they're a partner in community safety. And I stress partner because Sir Robert Peel, the founder of modern law enforcement, said it best: the police are the public, and the public are the police. So, public safety is of course what we get paid to do, but also the rest of the community has a role in that. And so, when we ask the Brainerd citizen, hey, what do you think of your police department? Partner, engaged, a police department that cares about their employees, that develops their employees, that makes sure that their employees are well cared for, that they aren't burnt out, that they are in a situation where they can provide the best possible service to the community. It's hard to inspire others when you yourself are not inspired. And so those are things that I'll strive to work hard towards as a Brainerd police chief. And those are the things that the community will see in their police department in 5 years.
Thank you. Discuss your philosophy and techniques relating to retention of law enforcement personnel.
Yeah, so this is such a difficult area for law enforcement in today's world. The retention piece of not only employees that have been in the profession for a long time that maybe get burnt out or maybe get sick of being painted with a broad brush of the social unrest that's occurring, but also you have to couple that with some of the millennial issues that we see. There's a lot less job loyalty, so to speak. The people working in the same job for 25, 30, 35 years just isn't going to be as common going forward with our newer generation. And so making sure that you're addressing both groups to try to retain great people is important. And you do that in part by listening to their concerns, developing them, understanding how they tick, what do they need, how do they gain satisfaction out of their job. It's going to be different for different people. Some people are high growth, need people. Some people are low growth, need people, but that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's situational leadership to understand what the employee needs. One surefire way to make an employee not feel valued is to not get their input or get it disingenuously and not try to implement it, not having a relationship with them, burning them out, expecting them to do too much work with not enough time, not enough resources, poor equipment. All of these things are all come together to ensure retention. Having the greatest possible training, having the greatest possible equipment, and for me as the chief, the greatest possible leadership and development in our people that will help keep them around long term.
Thank you. If you could go back to when you were first thinking about police work as a career, what advice would you give yourself?
I think for me, the advice that I would give myself I had some confidence issues with some of the mindsets that I currently have. Police work, and I'll try to do my best at explaining this. So police work is, a lot of people get into police work for the running and gunning kind of thing, the shooting and the driving fast and the arresting people. And those are all key components of public safety. But I wasn't, at that time, getting into law enforcement, I wasn't as maybe type A or as gung-ho about those concepts as others. And rather, I kind of focused on, reaching out to people and building relationships and helping them get to a better spot in life. And so I had a little bit of confidence issues in that I didn't feel like I was in it for the right reasons at that time. And so looking back, if just to tell myself, hey, look, it's okay to take a different approach to things. It's okay to focus on different strengths than maybe what the mainstream is currently doing, because I kind of reserved those for a long time, and it wasn't until just recently that I really started to really follow and be intentional about some of those desires that I have.
Thank you. So why should the Brainerd City Council select you as their next police chief?
Well, I'm not in the business of telling other people what to do, but the thing that I think is the best consideration for me as a candidate is having grown up. I was born and raised in Southwest Minnesota, small town called Ruthven. I always wanted to be in a small community or smaller community. Like I said earlier, I ended up in Fargo, but it's given me all of these different experiences and knowledge base to come back to what I'm passionate about. A smaller town where everybody, not everyone, but a lot of people know each other. We're in it to win it together. We know of each other. It's not so anonymous. And having that experience that I've had over the years in working in different areas of public safety, emergency preparedness, some of the emergencies that we've seen in Fargo, floods, all of those experiences that I can bring to the city of Brainerd, really I think makes me a good fit to be your chief. You're obviously going to have a lot of good candidates that you'll hear from today, but I think that my progressive, inclusive leadership style will be a great fit for the city of Brainerd.
Thank you. And our last question is, do you have questions for us?
Well, before, I just want to say I really appreciate your time. This is clearly an important thing for the city of Brainerd, and the fact that you're all together minus one is awesome. That you're able to interview these. It's such an important thing. Everybody paying attention throughout all of our interviews today. That I appreciate that. I guess the question that I have two questions. The first, is what is it that some of you find as the number one quality of a police chief?
Let's start with Kevin Stunek.
I believe building trust within the department. Not that we don't have it now, because we do, but I think we can expand on that. Trust within the department, being visible within the community.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to add to that? Jan, do you have an opinion?
I guess not.
No, I don't. Oh, you thought I didn't have anything. I agree with Kevin. Again, go back into the retention of our officers and the training, and care and retain, but to be able to take care of our community and our public servants. So thanks.
Does any council member or mayor have anything to add on top of that? Or council member elects? Seeing none, George, you have a second question?
Yeah, if I may, and this maybe is a more appropriate question for Gary. I'm just curious what the next steps are for the city council and moving forward in the process.
Jennifer, you have an idea what we do next?
So Georgia, I think that is a question for Gary, to reach out to Gary, and he'll be able to tell you the next steps. I do know that he intends on notifying candidates one way or the other. So
very good. Thank you for your time. Best of luck today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for taking your time, George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that leads us to break time. So
It does.
we'll be back here. Brent should be logging in at 3:40. So about 20 minutes to grab a snack or something.
See you in a bit.